Picture this: an ambulance, sirens wailing, lights flashing. Paul Heyman, the self-proclaimed special counsel, the Oracle, the greatest managerial mind in the history of this industry, strapped inside, bloodied, battered, and completely at the mercy of the man driving that vehicle. And as the ambulance peels out of the Gainbridge Fieldhouse in Indianapolis, as Logan Paul scrambles for his car and Austin Theory gets dropped cold on the pavement, the camera catches a glimpse of the driver's face. And the entire WWE universe live in that arena and watching at home loses its mind. Because it's not a paramedic behind that wheel, it is the Megastar. It is L.A. Knight. Yeah, what is up, everybody, and welcome back to Wrestling Impact, the channel where we break down the moments that make you jump off your couch and throw something at the TV in the best possible way. I'm your host, and tonight, we are diving deep into one of the most wildly entertaining, brilliantly orchestrated, and let's be honest, absolutely unhinged segments in recent Raw memory. L.A. Knight drove off with Paul Heyman in an ambulance. Let that sentence exist in your brain for a moment. And the beautiful thing? It all makes complete, perfect, storytelling sense. If you haven't subscribed to Wrestling Impact yet, smash that button right now, because tonight's breakdown is going to remind you exactly why we love professional wrestling. Let's get into it. To truly understand why Monday Night's Raw went completely off the rails in the most glorious way possible, we have to go back. Not weeks, not months, we have to go back to December of 2025. When the Vision did something truly unforgivable to the man who would eventually become their biggest nightmare. Bronson Reed. Atop a car. A tsunami that wasn't just a finishing move, it was a statement. L.A. Knight, one of the most over stars on the entire WWE roster, a man who had been fighting and clawing for everything he had, was written out of television in one of the most brutal acts of faction dominance we'd seen in years. The Vision didn't just beat L.A. Knight. They broke him. Or so they thought. The Vision, led by the cunning, calculating Paul Heyman, had become Raw's most dangerous entity heading into WrestleMania season. Logan Paul, the social media icon turned legitimate wrestling force. Austin Theory, the brash, overconfident muscle. Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed providing the kind of physical devastation that makes opponents reconsider their life choices. And at the center of it all, pulling the strings, whispering in the shadows, doing what Paul Heyman does better than anyone alive: managing, manipulating, and masterminding. The Vision was supposed to be unstoppable. They had every piece in place. And then, everything started to crack. It started at the Royal Rumble. L.A. Knight, the man they thought they'd buried, came back. He entered at number 21. He eliminated Bronson Reed, the same man who put him on the shelf. He eliminated Austin Theory. And even though he was eventually tossed out by Cody Rhodes, the message was already delivered: the Megastar was back, and he was coming for everything the Vision held dear. The fans in the arena that night absolutely erupted. Because this is what wrestling does at its best: it makes you believe in the comeback. It makes you invest in the journey. And L.A. Knight's journey had a very specific destination: revenge. Then came the Elimination Chamber. The Vision had Logan Paul positioned perfectly to make a statement on the grandest possible stage. And they almost pulled it off. Logan Paul, to his credit, was absolutely incredible in that match. 3 eliminations, maximum chaos, maximum arrogance, maximum entertainment. But then the music hit. Or rather, it didn't need to, because Seth Rollins appeared out of nowhere, and just like that, Logan's dream evaporated. Rollins, the visionary, the man the Vision had essentially declared war on for months, reached out from the shadows and snatched victory right out of Paul Heyman's carefully manicured hands. L.A. Knight didn't win the Elimination Chamber, but he made sure the Vision didn't either. Piece by piece, chip by chip, the Megastar was dismantling their empire. Now we arrive at this past Monday, Raw in Indianapolis. And if you thought the show was going to ease into the drama, think again. From the very first second, the Vision was already on a warpath. Paul Heyman led Logan Paul and Austin Theory, yes, just the two of them now, with Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed both sidelined with injuries, straight down to that ring with the energy of men who had been wronged and were demanding satisfaction. Heyman, microphone in hand, doing what he does: building a narrative, assigning blame, promising consequences. He told him directly, with that trademark theatrical venom, that if the Vision ever laid eyes on him, they would, and I'm paraphrasing here, handle their business in a very permanent way. And then Adam Pearce appeared on the stage. Cool, collected, management face fully engaged. He informed Paul that Seth Rollins was not medically cleared and was not in the building. Simple. Straightforward. The crowd smelled the lie immediately. Because of course they did. Pro wrestling has trained us to recognize that specific flavor of dramatic irony, the moment where the authority figure says something that every single person in that arena knows is about to be proven spectacularly wrong. What happened next was a masterclass in execution. One masked figure appeared at ringside, then another, emerging from different sections of the crowd, descending toward the ring, creating confusion, pulling Logan Paul and Austin Theory out into the crowd to give chase. And for a moment, Paul Heyman stood alone in that ring, the most powerful man in the room, suddenly the most vulnerable. One more masked figure approached from the entrance ramp. Heyman's eyes went wide. The crowd held its breath. And then the man in the mask removed it. Not from the ramp. Not from outside. From inside the ring. Seth Rollins had been standing behind Paul Heyman the entire time. That the look on Paul Heyman's face in that moment is something that should be studied in wrestling schools around the world. Sheer, unadulterated terror. The face of a man who has spent his entire career being the smartest person in the room, suddenly realizing the room has been redesigned around him. Rollins didn't say a word. He picked up a steel chair, and he swung it directly across Paul Heyman's back with a crack that echoed through the entire arena. Heyman went down, and then Rollins followed it up with the curb stomp driven straight into the mat, and the Oracle was done. Bloodied, broken, completely incapacitated on the canvas of Monday Night Raw. Medical staff rushed the ring. The boos were deafening, not because the fans hated what they were seeing, but because the Vision had built such genuine antagonism over these past months that watching their architect get his comeuppance was exactly the emotional release the crowd had been waiting for. Heyman was loaded onto a stretcher. An ambulance was waiting backstage. The narrative was heading toward a hospital segment, a concerned faction segment, a Logan Paul pacing the hallway segment, the kind of standard WWE drama we've seen before. Except as the ambulance was being loaded, Logan Paul sprinted off to get his car so he could follow. That left Austin Theory watching over his fallen Oracle. Theory leaned into the ambulance, checking on Heyman, playing the role of concerned faction member genuinely, which, let's be honest, is a level of sincerity we don't often associate with Austin Theory. And that's when Jimmy USO appeared. Jimmy, who had his own score to settle with the Vision after what happened to his brother G, dropped Theory with absolutely zero mercy. Cold. Fast. Done. The Vision's last line of defense, neutralized in seconds. And now Paul Heyman was alone, in an ambulance, with the doors about to close. The camera cut to the driver's seat, and there he was, hat tilted, eyes gleaming, the biggest smile you have ever seen on a professional wrestler who has just pulled off the greatest caper in recent Raw history. LA Knight, behind the wheel, in an actual ambulance, playing music, singing along, driving the most important hostage in all of professional wrestling into the Indianapolis night. The fans, and I cannot stress this enough, absolutely lost their minds. The pop in that building wasn't the usual reaction to a good in-ring moment. It was the reaction to a truly great piece of storytelling that no one saw coming, that was perfectly set up, and that delivered on every single level. The joy in that arena was infectious. People were screaming, pointing at the screen, grabbing strangers by the shoulders. This is the magic of pro wrestling when it's firing on all cylinders. It creates shared, communal, completely ridiculous joy that you wouldn't trade for anything. And just to make sure the moment truly transcended television, LA Knight took to social media to rub it in. He posted a video of himself, Dirty Work by Steely Dan, playing in the background, completely on brand for a man who has been doing the dirty work against the Vision for months, just vibing in that ambulance, completely unbothered, with the most significant managerial hostage in WWE history presumably somewhere behind him. The message he attached was brief, but it was everything. It was the megastar at his most megastar. Yeah. Now let's talk about why this matters beyond the incredible entertainment value of the moment itself. Because this isn't just a fun segment. This is strategic storytelling that serves every character involved in a specific, meaningful way. For Seth Rollins, the night was about establishing consequence. Rollins returned at the Elimination Chamber to cost Logan Paul, and the Vision had been openly threatening him for weeks. By using Rollins as the instrument of Heyman's destruction on this night, WWE gave the Visionary his moment, a visceral, violent, deeply personal act of defiance against the people who had been trying to ruin his life. Rollins attacking Heyman wasn't just revenge. It was a statement. And the decoy maskman strategy showed a level of tactical sophistication that reminds you why Seth Rollins, when he's at his best, is one of the greatest performers in this industry. For the USO brothers Jimmy and G, this is vindication. The Vision has systematically terrorized that family. G was taken out on SmackDown in a manner that directly benefited Logan Paul's chamber qualification. Jimmy hitting the scene at exactly the right moment to neutralize Theory wasn't random, it was personal, and it was earned. The crowd felt that. Every single punch landed with the weight of accumulated grievance, and when GUSO returned later in the show to help his brother, completing the set, Indianapolis absolutely erupted. But the star of this whole production, the person who benefits the most from this moment, is LA Knight. And here's the thing about LA Knight that WWE has sometimes struggled to fully capitalize on: this man connects with audiences in a way that is genuinely rare. The crowd doesn't just cheer for him, they want to be him. They want to be the guy who gets the impossible moment, who pulls off the impossible scheme, who drives away in the ambulance while the villains scramble on the pavement. The Megastar energy isn't just a catchphrase, it's a character promise. And Monday night, that promise was fulfilled in spectacular fashion. Think about the narrative arc. Knight was shelved by the Vision in December. He came back, he started picking them apart piece by piece, but there was always that one piece he hadn't touched: Paul Heyman, the puppet master. The man whose genius had enabled every act of villainy this faction committed. You can take out Theory, you can eliminate Reed, you can create chaos for Logan Paul, but until you reach Heyman, you haven't truly reached the heart of the Vision. And on Monday, LA Knight drove that heart away in an ambulance. With music playing. The comedy of the moment is important too, and I want to spend a second on that. Wrestling is at its best when it can hold multiple emotional registers simultaneously. The segment was dramatic: Heyman getting bloodied, Rollins executing one of his most impactful returns. It was action-packed: the masked decoys, the crowd chases, Theory getting leveled. But it was also genuinely, irreverently funny. LA Knight singing in that ambulance, barely containing his delight, almost running over a security guard on the way out. The camera caught it, it was chaotic, and the internet absolutely ran with it. That moment was unscripted in the best possible way. The ambulance took a wide curve rounding the ramp, a security worker had to sprint out of the way, and the crowd went from stunned silence to howling laughter in about half a second. You cannot write that. Well, you kind of can, but you know what I mean. So where does this go from here? That is the question hanging over every wrestling conversation right now, and honestly, the possibilities are delicious. Paul Heyman in the hands of LA Knight is one of the most compelling hostage scenarios this company has produced in years, because Heyman is genuinely one of the most valuable creative assets in professional wrestling. His ability to elevate a feud, to add layers to a conflict, to make any segment feel more consequential. Having Knight control that asset puts the Megastar in a position of power we haven't seen before. What does Knight want? What are his terms? What is the message he intends to send to the Vision, and specifically to Logan Paul, through Heyman? And then there is the Seth Rollins dimension. Because Rollins and Knight are technically pursuing the same enemy, but they are not the same person, and their motivations are not identical. Rollins is operating on a deeply personal vendetta. This is about his identity, his legacy, the visionary taking on the Vision in the most ironic war of words this business has seen. Knight is operating on pure, righteous revenge for what was done to him physically. Are they allies? Are they competitors? Is there a collision course being built between two of Raw's most charismatic performers as they both try to destroy the same target? The story is rich with possibility. WrestleMania 42 is on the horizon, and while LA Knight himself has said in interviews this week that he genuinely doesn't know what his plans look like, and you have to respect that kind of honesty, the storytelling momentum he has right now is undeniable. You don't kidnap Paul Heyman in an ambulance on live television without that paying off in some massive way before the year's biggest show. The road to WrestleMania has a very Megastar-shaped chapter being written right now, and every single fan who watched Monday's Raw is leaning forward to see what happens next at what makes professional wrestling truly special. And I say this as someone who has watched a lot of television, a lot of storytelling, across a lot of genres, is that it lives and breathes in the moment. The best segments don't feel scripted, they feel inevitable. Like everything that came before was quietly, patiently building toward this exact payoff. LA Knight sitting in that ambulance, driving Paul Heyman into the night, was inevitable. Every injury the Vision inflicted, every weak Knight came back a little stronger. Every piece of the Vision's empire he chipped away at. It all led to the moment where the smartest man in the faction, the man who orchestrated all of it, was suddenly at the mercy of the man he tried to destroy. That's storytelling. That's professional wrestling. That's why we're here. If you're new to Wrestling Impact, welcome. This is what we do. We go beyond the highlight reel and into the story beneath the story, the character work, the emotional architecture that makes these moments actually mean something. Drop a comment below right now and tell me, what do you think LA Knight does with Paul Heyman? Because I have theories, but I want to hear yours. And if you want to be part of this community, if you want to be here every time Raw delivers a moment that makes you slam your hands on the desk and say, "Did that just happen?" hit that subscribe button and make sure your notifications are on. We are not slowing down heading into WrestleMania season. Not even close. For Wrestling Impact, I'm your host, and the Megastar, somewhere out there in Indianapolis, is still driving. Yeah.